Hey, this is B from Kong's Arrest, and today we're going to show you how I built my very own Star Wars battle pod in my home arcade. Alright, so we're going to do a full showcase of the actual battle pod mod, but first I want to go over the story of why I even built a battle pod in the first place. It all started back when I first started my home arcade journey. When I built my own Star Wars mod, I modded the yoke to plug into a PC and play extra games on a PC. Star Wars Trilogy and Star Wars Battle Pod were the main reasons why I even did that mod in the first place. My very first video on YouTube was a full-on tutorial on how to wire up the yoke into an 8-pack controller, and the Marquee game I truly wanted to play was Star Wars Battle Pod. And originally it worked okay with the yoke, and eventually I added a throttle into the actual tiny control panel hands, and I was using a yoke and whatnot. It was fun because I remember playing this in the arcade the first time I ever stepped foot into a Star Wars Battle Pod Dome. It was a Dave & Buster's. It was around 2015, 2016, and this was a massive arcade machine. You stepped into it and you're immediately immersed in this giant dome with a projector and a flight stick and a throttle. And man, it felt so good to play that game, but it was stupid expensive. I only play like one stage or two, and the dream of playing this in your home became a reality once I did my Star Wars mod. But the itch was never scratched. I always wanted to do something more with it. Could never afford a giant dome in my house, but the Star Wars Battle Pod on my Star Wars mod was good enough. I will eventually do a lot more gameplay videos on my modded Star Wars arcade cabinet, showing off different throttles that were available to actually have a throttle and flight stick combination. I was doing all sorts of things with the Tron stick and a flight handle thing, and it kind of worked. My very first mod even it was a sit-down version of the Star Wars Battle Pod or Star Wars arcade cabinet, where I was using a yoke and then an actual flight stick on the left-hand side of on top of the PC, just to make sure I had somewhat of a flight stick combination. And it was okay. I was even messing around with Outrun. I was like, anytime I can mod something with the PC, I was like, hey, let's just test out and see if BattlePod even works. And I was playing BattlePod on Outrun. It was dumb. It was a dumb obsession. But more and more, I just, really loved this game and playing it. And the dream started to become more of a reality once I started partnering and connecting with some of my good modding arcade friends. George Addona, almost about 2 years ago, reached out to me randomly in a message and was like, hey, I saw a flat screen battle pod out in the wild and it was awesome. And yes, it is freaking awesome. Look at this video footage of the flat screen version of Star Wars Battle Pod. I've seen pictures of it online, but I've never really seen an in-person version of it. And the first time I saw one was at Captain's Auction showroom, and then I eventually went to an arcade and saw a real one in person. The flat screen version was beautiful, just as much as the dome version. It had these awesome sides and a big sign, an awesome chair that you can sit down on. It looked really cool, and I was like, this is now potentially feasible. Maybe I can own one of these someday. And George is the best 3D printing guru that I know, and was like, let me mock this up. He sent me a picture on April 6, 2022, was like, hey, I was messing around and I built this control panel, and like he modeled it up and it looked great. He didn't actually scan anything. He just did this all by eye. So he created that, and that started the journey of us looking at like, could we build a home arcade version of Star Wars Battle Pod, a 3/4 scale version? I don't even know what scale it is. But he was like, let me just kind of have some fun and model this up, and I'm going to make you one, and eventually I'll make myself one. At the time I had this racing rig that I had built for the At Games Legends, one of their board thingies to be able to connect, I think what it was called. And I was like, hey, this is my racing rig. Maybe I'll just put a Star Wars Battle Pod frame around it. And that was the start. And I'm going to buy these HOTAS flight sticks, talk about that later on. And that was kind of like, all right, when we have this plan in mind, you're just trying to like go with it and not really have a full-on blueprint of how it's going to work. But he continued to model the top sides, the bottom part of it. And then we're like, hey, maybe we can actually use an existing racing base. And that's when the Buy Stuff Arcades team came in. I reached out to the Buy Stuff guys, Mike and Dave, and was like, hey, can we collab? And they were just coming out with their racing cab. And it was really cool that they had a base, they had a seat base, and then they had a back box that can house a 32-inch screen. And I was like, I think I can get away with just using the base of everything. I'm going to get my own chair and then use that as the design. And George also was really good in Photoshop and mocked up the base design to match the Star Wars flat screen battle pod version with the, nice, very simple, artistic, imperial art design on the base. And that became like, hey, this can become reality now. Sent it to the Buy Stuff guys. They helped, print out a custom job for me, and they got that shipped out pretty quick. George, over the months, was still continuing to slowly design and print out stuff and send stuff to me. And I was like, every time he sent me pictures, I was so excited. And he finally kind of sent me the final look of what it could look like. And I was just like, man, this is finally coming a reality. And so once George shipped me all the parts, it was like almost a year and a half ago, in like December of 2022. I had all this stuff and like sat on it for like a whole year. I could not have the space to build this. And so I really didn't get to finally building this project until December 31st, 2023. And then afterwards, I just went really quickly into putting this all together. And so let's start talking about the build process of putting this together, of what it looked like. I started off with the actual Buy Stuff base. The Buy Stuff base was really great. They sent it to me in 2 boxes. It was very clean and easy put together. I was really impressed with the quality of their build, using cam locks and everything to hide all the screws. I got the hood component of it in the back to hide the PC, which my PC is too big for it. But it came together really nicely. And this was custom art that George did for everything. So it looked fantastic for the base, really easy to put together. And I was like, I really want to get this together quickly so I can do something for my New Year's stream. Once I put it together, I used a TV mount to mount the 32-inch screen onto the back. And I was like, this will be the start of, the Star Wars Battle Pod, once I'm able to figure out a way to mount all the 3D printed parts. Now let's talk about the chair that I ended up using. So the Buy Stuff guys normally recommend a gaming chair for their base. And so they have a couple different GT racing chairs they use for their standard builds. And that's fine. It kind of reclines and looks really nice. But I really like arcade chairs, real ones, if I can use them. And so I started hunting for them on eBay and found a used Hydro Thunder seat base from an arcade. And I had no idea if the speakers still work, but hey, it worked. It was local. When I first got it, it was dirty and dingy and trashed up. And it sat in my garage for over a year. Mrs. Congress had no idea that it was there. And so I grabbed that, scrubbed it down, washed it down, plopped it on top of the base, and was like, this could work. Even though it's blue, this could work. I went from that and was like, I really also want to reuse the speakers. There's 2 speakers in the back and a subwoofer in the base. And I was like, if I can get this working, surround sound would be freaking awesome. So that was already like, boom, I want that to happen if I can reuse the speakers or not. So my first thing I did after I cleaned it up was I decided to paint it, because I didn't think the blue matched with the scheme of the Star Wars Battle Pod. So I went with this black matte finish for everything to spray it down. And I was like, if I sit down on the spray paint, even if I clear coat it, eventually it's going to scratch. So at first I made this little blue racing stripe, where I can have the raw blue plastic there and just sit on that portion of it. But even I didn't really like that at all once I tested it out for a little while. So I ended up painting the whole thing black. And I thought it looked much better. I just had to be careful if I sit on it. I might have to coat it again if I need to in the future. But spray painted with several coats and then a ton of different clear coat. I spent so much time spray painting that seat base, but I thought it ended up looking really, really nice at the end of it. So took out the speakers and the subwoofer, painted it down several different times, clear coated it. I've scratched it already sitting on it, so just try not to sit on it with zippers or anything else like that. It's okay. I'll touch it up once in a while, but I think it looks fantastic. In addition to that, so looking at the back of the actual grills, I'll talk about that. I got some Rebel symbols and then wiring up the actual audio. That took some time. Actually, the speakers themselves were working. The speakers and the subwoofers, I was able to rewire them into an amp and get it working. I just had to make sure I got a good enough amp so I didn't get any buzzing noises. So I was able to rewire everything back up, showcase how it works out. So I got the speakers working. So the bass looks fantastic. Next up, I had to figure out a way to mount the 3D printed parts onto the TV. Like when George sent it to me, it was like, I have no idea how you're going to do this. And I was like, I can't mount this to the TV itself. I have to build a box around it. So I went to Lowe's, got some 1/4-inch plywood, and then created this box frame around the TV that I can just kind of like put on top of the TV and let it just sit there. And then I figured out I'd be able to mount the 3D printed parts on here. So this is where no blueprint exists. This is me just figuring it out on my own, seeing if I can make this work, and I spray painted it black. And I was like, all right, every single time it's starting to come together, I think it's gonna work. So I built the box for it. And then the parts themselves, the 3D printed parts, George is a master at this. But again, all things aside, like, you know, sometimes when you print large pieces, they all don't align. So yes, some of the things aren't aligned, and there were some seams there. But I was like, I want to take some time to try to make it looking as best as I can. So I decided to, you know, instead of just popping it together and taping it, I took some time to try to glue the pieces together where I could, let it sit for a day, dry, putty up all the seams, try to sand it down so I can remove the seams for everything, spray paint the entire thing. So I took my time on the top piece and the side pieces, which required multiple pieces to push together, and tried my best to at least remove as many of the seams as I could. I couldn't get it actually perfect, but I figured it would deserve to make it looking as nice as it can. But it is multiple pieces, so, you know, it's not going to be perfect when it gets to that 3D printing side. And even the Star Wars lettering, right, for the Star Wars marquee portion of it, it was kind of acrylic pieces of yellow and clear plastic, and there was no way to attach it. So I just had to glue them in place, hope it kind of fit, and then, you know, use some double-sided clear tape to be able to make them fit as well. So there are some details where it's like, I have no idea how to put this together, and George was like, I'm sure he can figure it out. There's no instructions on this stuff, and I just did it. And then lastly, there's some extra space to be able to wire everything up to get everything to light up. So I'll showcase that in a second. But once I got all that figured out, I figured out a way to mount it to the sides of that wooden box. You know, both sides, kind of screwed them into place. And then I mounted that front frame as well, the bottom control panel, made that sure it was good, put the top part on, and then finally just mounted it onto the TV. It looked really, really good. All right, and then finally the controls. What did I end up using for the controls itself? I ended up using some Logitech X56 HOTAS hands-on throttle and stick combinations. I bought these mounts that would mount onto the base itself because I wanted the flight stick and the throttle. And I chose to use this. It was like a $250 throttle and stick combination because it looked really nice, had all these buttons, and I can use it for PC, other flight games. I thought I could also use real arcade hardware if I wanted to, but it probably would have cost just as much to like install a real arcade throttle and stick combination. So I was like, might as well just try to do something that still looks nice. And I thought the X56 matches everything aesthetically really nice. So, and it plays really well too. So you don't have to have, you know, super arcade authenticity. So it looks nice. Also in the middle, this is still going to be my racing rig too. So I have a G29 Logitech racing wheel there with pedals underneath. So this is a driving sim and a flight sim. And with that mount, I had it nice and flush. Got my father-in-law to help drill off some of the sides of that mount so it sits flush on the sides too, which was really awesome. And then that was it. Once I did that, it was finally time, you know, to put it all together, wire it up for lighting, and see what it turned out. So let's go ahead and finally go over to the showcase and show you what the finale of this thing looks like. All right, let's start this showcase looking at this giant topper here. Again, 3D printed with the acrylic pieces here. Tried to cover up the seam lines as best as I could, and let's see how we lit up this entire thing. Starting off with this 12-volt LED strip. I used one singular LED strip here, which starts with the zigzag across the Star Wars side that lights up the front panel. I just used some tape to cover up the back side, so you don't really need to see it that much. The LED strip comes back down outside of the box, and then I drilled a little hole to get to the side panel, and that's what pretty much lights up this front side panel section right here. So the side panel, I'm just gonna pull this apart so you can see it. There's an LED strip that comes all the way down here. It's gonna light up the side panel right down here, as well as this bottom section. And then that front bottom section comes all the way down and is wired right over here. And so on this bottom side, you'll see the LED strip going across the back side all the way into the other side panel. So again, this is all powered by a singular 12-volt adapter, and I have it plugged into this switch right here, so you can just turn it off and on. And here I'm just using 3M double-sided tape to be able to mount this inside piece to hide the LEDs. So let's talk about the TV, which is a basic 1080p 32-inch Best Buy generic TV that I got on sale several years ago. I probably could upgrade the screen itself, but didn't really see a need to. But you can do whatever you want to. The brains of this is actually a gaming PC, and here I have an i7 with a 1080 GPU inside of here. A little bit overkill, but you know, it's an older budget gaming PC that I have in here. The hood doesn't quite fit because it's a little bit big, but there it is right there. I have my wheel that is moving right there because it is powered by the 24-volt adapter there. Got my flight sticks here, so as the PC turns on and it calibrates, everything is there setting up. And here is my nice little PC mod, and now we can get into playing some of the games. But let's go over the rest of the cab first. Next up, you can see this amp here. This is a nice 2.1 amp here that is just actually powering 2 car speakers on the front side. So these simple amps are kind of really nice because they don't produce a lot of buzz. These are 4-inch car speakers on the bottom side of that front panel, and so once you see it on the front side, you can't even tell that the speakers are there, and that's actually where the speakers are on the real cabinet itself, that there's speakers that are coming right here on a real battle pod. So it's nice that the speakers are coming out of here and plugged directly into the PC. Coming out of the PC, I have a power cord as well as an audio cable into this mesh braid there, going straight into another amp underneath the base of the seat there that can be controlled with those knobs there. This is the wiring straight into the stock speakers on that Need for Speed arcade chair. So let's go ahead and take a look at that arcade chair finally as well. It's really nice, put together here, that you can tell. I had to do a lot of modding to it, but it looks gorgeous here. It's the nice little grill, so we have 3-inch speakers in the top section here, as well as a 12-inch sub down here. Let's take a look at this little artwork here, this nice decor that George Addona did. I had to separate it a little bit, but I think it really matches the design of the stock seats from BattlePod. And check this out, the premium edition of the Star Wars BattlePod actually had this exact plaque here that had Anakin Skywalker or Luke Skywalker on there. So here is the Star Wars BattlePod Premium Arcade Wizards version. That's right, shout out to the Wizards. Owner is Kongs R Us, the serial number SWPP. Nice little George Addona there. So this is really awesome to have this custom premium edition here that I just mounted onto the back of the speaker grill. Again, this is the sub that's on the back side. This really bumps because it has a 2.1 amp sub there, and yeah, I get to feel some bass, so we'll be able to test that out a little bit later. I just love the artwork on this as well. Super clean, matches really with the original artwork. So this chair is amazing. I really like how it turned out with the nice shiny Rebel logos there. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the entire cab itself. One of the most common questions I've been getting is how much did this all cost to make? And that really depends on you. As I've been building this for several years and I have a lot of parts on my own in stock, some of the biggest costs here are the actual racing cab base from Buy Stuff. This is $300 for the cab base, $100 for this seat here, so that's $400 for this. If you want the graphics printed, it's another $50, and then the hood is another extra $50, but that's completely optional since I really don't need that. It's against the back. The biggest thing here is the George Addona 3D printed parts and acrylic pieces here. This is, I don't know, he didn't really put any value on how much this would cost if he was going to make it. I don't even know if he's going to offer it, so I'll definitely ask him and see if I can get some information on it. But I had to put some value on it. I'd say it's at least $500 for all the parts and the time that was put to put this together. It's a lot of work, and you know, the next biggest expense is probably my gaming PC that I have in here. So this PC might be about, you know, $500 to $1,000 with the graphics card and all the specs inside of it. Next biggest cost is probably going to be your flight stick and your PC wheel here. So this is $250 for this flight stick and another $250 for this G29 wheel there. So that's $500 in just the controls there. So just really expensive for what you want. I chose to use an arcade racing seat, which is about another $75 that I got off of eBay. So it just kind of depends if you can find one and source one. And last couple of things, little knickknacks there. Had these little symbols there. I actually got some speakers and some wiring and some amps that, you know, cost, you know, anywhere from $25 to you know, $50 for all those little miscellaneous parts. If I had to calculate it really quickly all together, I'd say it's ballpark a little under $2,000 in terms of value. But again, I didn't pay for it all at once. You know, I bought the spray paint, did a lot of labor. It's a labor of love when you're modding, and you can get something like this. All right, and there it is, all finally put together. Let's just take one final look again at the full put together racing rig setup there, the seat there with the X56 HOTAS with the G29 steering wheel. I used some of the extra graphics that Spy Stuff guys printed for me and just put it there to make it look a little bit nicer on the sides. You got the side artwork for that racing kit there, really clean logo. I put a little Easter egg for Star Wars Battle Pod on the back because George printed it out for me. This is that mounts there, so it just does have this little kind of bottom portion that does stick out, so that might be the only thing I don't like about the mount there. But everything else looks absolutely gorgeous. You got your side panels that are lit up there with the Star Wars Battle Pod. Oh my goodness, this looks so good, especially night and night. Let's go ahead and turn off the lights in just a second. You guys can see what it looks like all lit up in the dark. I am completely in love with this machine. You know, it's one of the mods that have always been a dream cabinet. Thank you again so much to George Addona and Buy Stuff guys, and you know, anybody that's been supporting the channel for a long time. This is just an absolutely pleasure dream cab to put together and showcase for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll do gameplay in a separate video, but otherwise this plays some racing games, it plays Star Wars Battle Pod. It's freaking awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.